Hello, hello. Something different again today. I was contacted by Debs from Attic Lane Studios asking if I would be interested in doing a collaboration with her. And by collaboration, what we have done is we have swapped a kit. So Debs has one or two of my kits and I have a couple of her kits. And we decided we'd just do a crafty session and see what we could create and come up with. So I have Victorian ledger and Victorian ephemera collection. And I've kind of got a little idea in my head what I'd like to do with this kit. I do have one other kit, but I'm not sure I'm going to use it. So I just want to go through a little bit about what I've done. This is a beautiful document. There are some amazing pages in this. And these pages here, there aren't quite as many alternatives as I was hoping because my printer was not playing fair. I have printed these on a few different, so those ones are printed on photo paper. These are also printed on photo paper. This just gives you an idea of what the kit is like and how beautiful it is. So those are photo paper pages. But then what I've done is I have printed a few on newsprint, and this is where my printer was throwing a bit of a hissy fit. Wasn't very happy with me printing onto newsprint. It used to print onto newsprint perfectly, but now I was getting a lot of black splodges, and I was also getting a lot of these lines. Now I know some of you are going to say that's printer ink. Well, no, it's not, because we did a head clean and we did everything we possibly could, and it's still printed like this, but then it prints on the photo quality paper perfectly. So I just think it decided it didn't like newsprint. This and this is printed onto a really nice writing paper. I think it's called, I can't remember, something beginning with C, but it didn't particularly like printing on this either. So I kind of had a bit of a play about, because some things I was printing, I selected default for these plain papers, but as soon as I selected to print onto photo paper, it was absolutely fine. And these ones I printed onto some really thin paper that I got from the lovely Kerry Fellows, which is kind of like a deli paper. It's shiny one side and smooth the other. But again, my printer was not happy, but I still like the way these turned out. So I know I haven't got a huge variety of pages, but when you get a kit like this, it's really worth playing with printing onto different types of paper. Now, obviously I have to cut all of these out. And I don't know if you recall, several months ago, I did a video on making ephemera like this look genuine. So we're going to have a little play a bit more with that to create what I've got in my head. So I'm going to just cut all these out. It's going to take me a minute. I'll be back. I've got these two left to do, so I thought I would do these on camera. I've basically used my scissors to do all of them. You can use one of these little distress tools if you want, but what I've done is just very lightly rub my scissors down the edge of the pages, and in some areas I'll show you in a minute how I've put a kind of more random tear in. So let's say halfway up here I just want to make a rip, so I've just put a little bit more pressure on. Oops, oh, that one was an accident. But it's fine, just makes the pages look more aged. And then just roughly across there. This one's a little bit more difficult. I don't want to make too many mistakes, so I've just gone ahead and cut a few little random sections out, like so. And then with a very soft kind of, just go over. You have to be really careful with the newsprint to give it a bit of a scuffed edge. Okay, I'm going to call that day. So I'm going to ink the front and the back of these, and because I want it, I want to be able to decide where I want a heavy inked edge and where I want it a bit lighter. I'm just going to go round with a brush and just pull that ink in that I've put down on my board. I might go a bit heavier at the top here. If you get little creases, that's fine, just adds to that aged effect. And this one, so the areas where I've got torn pieces, some of them I'm just going to leave, like this one where I've folded over, but some of them I'm going to take some of this medical tape, give that a bit of a torn edge. Pop that down on my board. I'm going to ink that. And then I'm going to take my art glitter glue . Okay, I actually quite like that. It looks even more aged now. Just going to give that a little bit more of an ink. Okay, so actually I'm really pleased with that. So I'm going to just go through and find, these are the other pages. So this one I've got rather a large tear on that one. So I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to ink here. And I'm going to put a little bit of tape there on this tear. I feel like I'm all fingers and thumbs today. A steel pin. So quite like that. Another one here with quite a large tear. I'm going to ink it first just to give that a bit of definition, so even though it's going to have tape on it, we know that there's a tear under there. I think that's probably that one. Okay, I'm going to do something different on this one. So these are my page. Actually, I'm going to tear that one off completely. But these are my pages ready to go. I'm going to, one of these is actually a little bit bigger because I wanted that for, that's the one that I want to decide for my cover. Now all of my pages are done, I want to separate them because some of them are the same. So the ones that are the same I'm going to put together. Okay, so what I'm going to do is separate them so they're not, I'm not going to have the same pages together. And I'm going to start with these photo paper ones. So okay, so I'm going to have that way. I'm going to flip that one, and I'm going to flip that one, and then I'm going to put this one here. So I'm going to make that a second page. I might put that between here, these two. Let me just look at that. I'm going to slot that in there. This one I'm going to slot into there, and I'm going to put that one upside down. Do the same way. Okay, I think this is how I'm going to have my pages. So I'm going to start with this one and fold that in half. I want to add a few alternative pages. I've got a piece of blank deli paper. I'm just going to fold that. I have a piece of piano roll, which is finally almost kind of flat enough to use, and a piece of packaging paper. I'm only going to add 3 pages because I don't want this to have too much bulk, and I still want to add a few pockets and things to this. So what I'm going to do is, they are obviously all the wrong size. I'm going to use my tear ruler, and I'm going to do this in a very crude manner. Right, I actually should not have folded those yet, and you'll see why shortly. So I'm going to add them into places where I have blank pages. And what I really need is for that to make sure it reaches the edge. Okay, I think that's fine. I really should have had the inside page facing the other way. I've got an extra page here. I'm going to put this one in. Probably shouldn't have, but it's probably going to be too thick now for what I have in mind, but we're going to go for that. Okay, actually that works really well. Yeah. Okay, so there are our pages. Next, I need to work on my cover. To make my cover, I'm going to use a file folder. This is a US size one because I got this from Jessica Rapp. Now, I don't want to necessarily have these edges here, so I'm just lining my pages up. And the good thing about not measuring is you could, depending on what size paper you're printing on, you can use the same process. I'm going to put a little line at the bottom there and a little line at the top here, just given a couple of millimeters either side. So I've got a slightly bigger cover than my pages. So simple, bringing in my paper trimmer. And I'm just using the line as a guide to cut those edges off. Like I said, I'm not going to measure because depending on what size paper you're using will depend on what size cover you need. You can measure if you want to, I'm not. Okay, so what I want to do is put my pages in the middle here, like so. And I'm good with these pages not being flush, and you'll see why. I'm going to take my pencil again, and I'm going to just give that a couple of millimeters. I've got it in the center, so that would fold shut if I wanted it to. And I'm going to put a little mark here. Now I'm going to grab my foldy paper thing, scoreboard, and I'm just going to score at that line. Okay, so I'm now going to fold it. Excuse me. You can now see we've got our original crease and the crease that we have made, which is where our pages are going to push against. What I want to do is trim off the edge of that left-hand side, and we've only got a small amount of space down there beside the pages, and I don't want to have a problem folding over again. So I just fold that back on itself. As you can see, I'm going to take my pencil to draw a guideline down that fold, and I'm going to grab my paper trimmer to trim off the extra along that edge. I'm having to voice over because we had a technical issue. Okay, so now I have the folds where I want them to go. I will figure it out and turn it over in a minute. And we're going to fold that back on itself again. So this should now fit. I'll pop in the pages, close that, and just make sure I can fold it over. So we're going to have, I got the idea from this from Piano Roll, actually. But there are many people that have done similar things. So there are lots of different versions of this out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm folding it again, and I'm going to use that line as a guide. Take my pencil, draw my line, and then I'm going to use the paper cutter again to cut that. Cut that extra cardstock off. I'm going to use that later on to back some cards and tags. Right, so what I need to do is find the centre of that flap, what's going to become my flap. So I'm going to grab my ruler, and this is where I am actually going to measure, and that's 28.5 centimetres. So I need to put a mark about 14.25 centimetres with my pencil, which is going to be roughly in the centre of that flap. Now I don't want it to be all a triangular shape, so I'm going to use my ruler just to make a guideline along that crease. So I use my ruler, and I'm just going to put a little mark at the edge of the page. I'm just going to make sure that folds so it's nicely on the fold, and just put a little line on the left and the right hand side, and then I'm going to use the ruler to join those lines up. Now, of course, these lines are going to be fairly sharp edges at the moment, and I'm going to use something round, and I grab the lid of my Pritt stick just to round those edges off. So I line up the lid with those straight lines and just put my little mark in there, and I do the same on the sides. And once I've done that, I'm just going to grab my scissors and cut this out. And now we have our envelope style document wallet holder thingy. So I can grab my pages once I find them. Put the pages in place and just make sure that's going to fold nicely. Now, I'm not actually going to be putting my pages into the centre there, but you could sew them along here if you wanted to. I'm going to do something a little bit different, which I'll show you shortly. I just need to make sure they line up with that edge nicely. I'm going to take that larger piece that I printed, and this is going to be how I decorate my cover. Just trying to decide which one that I want as the main cover and which one I'm going to use on the flap. Okay, I think I decided to use the one on the right hand side, the more neutral colour. It was the printer settings that changed it from the slightly pink shade to the more neutral tone. I made my decision and then I realised that although I've printed it slightly bigger, I've printed it slightly too big. So I'm just going to grab my scissors and trim a small amount off the bottom just to make sure that it fits nicely. But I still have a little bit of a gap around the edge of that main cover. I'm just going to make some indentations on there just to make it look a bit distressed, and then use my scissors again. And then of course I'm going to have to re-ink that particular edge of the page. Now I was deciding whether to glue this with the crease or whether to cut it down the centre, and I think I'm actually going to cut it down the centre so there's no issue with folding that paper once it's glued to the cover. So I'm just going to trim off a couple of millimetres using my paper cutter, and then of course I need to distress those edges and ink those too. So I've got my two large panels and I now need to make my smaller panel. Now, no, it's not going to be perfectly matched up and the colour isn't going to match either, but I'm going to add the same page again to that flap. So I'm just going to line it up with the edge, close that flap over my page, and then I'm going to use my pencil to draw round the flap. And now I am going to need to cut it out. And this is not going to have an edge around it because I'm cutting it much more exactly to the flap of that folder. So now I'm going to ink around the entire wallet, giving that a nice distressed look. And then I want to go around the edges with a much darker colour just to give that some contrast. And I do that along the edges on the outside and on the inside, but only around the edges. Now I need to glue my pieces into place. And this is where I did actually have a bit of a panic that I was gluing them the wrong way round. I realised I wasn't. After checking, I was gluing them the correct way. So I just finished that off. And then I'm just going to trim that tiny piece off that I'd cut incorrectly and just give that one last dark ink around the edge there. And then that's our document folder cover thing finished. So I'm going to just do a little bit more printing after this, and we're going to come back and we're going to decorate our pages. I just put them in just to double check it looks good, and I'm quite happy with how that looks so far. Okay, this is going to be a little bit trial and error because I haven't exactly completely thought this through. I'm going to use my punch, and I'm going to punch, I think, probably 3 circles. This punch is not particularly... So I've got three circles, and hopefully that's going to be... Actually, it probably needs 2. You can obviously make a decision how strong you need to have that. And I'm going to punch. I'm actually going to punch out that piece. That piece with the tape on, because I think that would look quite nice over here. I'm going to glue these together. Like I said, I haven't entirely worked this out. I just know roughly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to glue those together there. And then I'm going to glue my patterned paper on top. I'm hoping the sound is going to work, because the last part of the video had really terrible sound, so I had to voice over that. We're back to working live. The trials and tribulations of filming. Okay, now I want that to go somewhere around here, but it needs a good inking first. We don't want this to look out of place. Now, I don't know whether this particular punch will work. I might need my long arm crocodile for this. Let's see, is that going to be? No, that should be okay. That should be not too bad. That, however, is slid about. So I'm going to punch the hole. I'm going to put that in as far as it will go. And I'm going to punch my hole. Not perfectly centre. You could use a brad for this instead of an eyelet, but I'm going to be using an eyelet because I want that look, and I don't want the brad on the back side of my flap. Okay, right, let's just put this into place. It's not perfect at all, but that's in. Now I have one of these picture hooks. I need this. I need to open this, so I can't find. I'm going to grab my awl and just slide that in there to open up those pieces. Okay, now I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac. I'm going to take my pages out so I don't risk getting those covered in glue. I'm going to put some Fabri-Tac here and on the inside. And like I said, I haven't tried this yet, so I'm just hoping for the best. Slide that on. And then I'm using my pliers to close that. The best I can. I'm going to switch to a different pair of pliers now. And we have a little while before this glue is actually going to hold this shut at all. But you can see the pliers do squeeze that shut quite nicely. I do wish I'd have got this a little bit more central, and I also wish I'd been a little bit more careful with my glue. Okay, so far so good. What I've done is realised I've put this on before I've sewn around, so I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. Don't do what I do. Sew first, then add your picture hook. I'm going to attempt to sew around these pieces now without touching that. I will be back. I have a red and I have a grey. Now the red I'm going to use here. So I know this is not how you should do it. but I'm sorry. Right, now I'm going to pop that through here and through here. Just going to use these paper clips to keep this out of the way for a moment. Tie that. So I've tied my first part of the knot. I'm just going to pull that tight and use my awl to hold that in place while I tighten my second knot. Now I'm going to tie a very small bow. You don't have to. You could use ribbon, that would look really cool. Vintage. It's terrible trying to do something so fiddly while you're filming. I'm not very good at it, and I'm going to just trim these off. Right. So now that's kind of part one done. And I know this is going to be a very unusual format to kind of use, but I'm quite happy so far. Now I'm going to take my grey thread, and this one is going to be used as my closure. I want a double thickness of that. It's hard to know how much to pull off, but taking a length of that, find the centre, thread that through my picture hook and through here. This is waxed thread, so it's a little bit fiddly. Okay, and then that can go round and do up by tucking behind. Oh, this will loosen. There we go. So that's long enough. I'm going to trim that. So there we have the unembellished document wallet. I'm really happy with it. I like that. I like that a lot. So now we're going to do some filling in on the inside. So I've only printed 2 pages. I've printed a page of tags and this little page of pockets. These are from the ephemera set, the Victorian ephemera set. Now I've got a feeling these pockets are going to be too big. So I'm just going to roughly cut this first one out. I'm not going to cut it perfectly because, like I said, I'm not sure if this is going to be too big for our purpose. Let's have a look. Now, if I make a fold there, I can see that's going to be too big. That's not going to work. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to adjust the size of my pockets. I'm going to print this page again. This time I'm going to print it at maybe 80% and we'll see what happens. The tags, I think we're fine with. They're not going to be too big. I'll be back. I have reprinted the pockets and just cut those out and inked around them. So these are ready to go. Now I just need to find a page for them to go on. I'm thinking it should be a fairly plain page. So I'm gonna maybe add one. Actually, that looks a bit lost there, doesn't it? That's fairly thin paper here. Okay. I am actually going to go onto the back of this page. I'm going to use my, oh no I'm not. I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac. A bit of glue seepage. There are another couple of pockets which may have been more appropriate for this kind of style journal, to be honest, but it's too late now. It's glued in. Now you get this little kind of tag with a notch, and then okay. I thought those would fit over the top of each other. I'm just going to pop this index one in here. I thought it was designed to go over this one. That will teach me for assuming anything. So, and I've left this just on the plain paper, so it hasn't got too much bulk to it. That's going to go in there. And then let's find another, I think this one. We should put this here. Let me just double check that that does go in there. That's already inked. Okay, give that a second to dry. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of the plain tags in here rather than the little card. Now the biggest issue I have is if I shrink something, I can't really cut that hole out necessarily. I'm going to try, but I'm not 100% sure that my punch is going to be the right size. So let's try that one. That looks a little bit too small. Just a tad. That's not too bad. And I'll try the bigger hole in this one. There we go. They look pretty cool. So we'll put a couple of little tags in there. So I suppose the other thing I wanted to do was make maybe a couple of bigger tags, but now I'm thinking maybe there are some notelets in the kit. So I think I'm going to print those and add those instead, but I'm really liking this so far. It's almost done. So I've printed these at 80% or so, and I'm going to grab a couple of pages. I think I'm going to add some here, 2 here, and again I haven't backed them, so they're nice and thin in this document wallet. And the other 2, don't want them too close to those. I think we'll add, oh, let's have a look. I'm going to add to this back page, I think. Down here. There we go. So this is our finished little document wallet. There is plenty of room to write in here if you wanted to use it as a journal. But I think the paper combination is beautiful. The text on these pages are just wonderful. I don't want to force that open. Obviously you could crease that to write on it. But yeah, that's our little project using the papers from the marvellous Attic Lane. And you could still add pockets and things here if you wanted. So, and that closes like so. I hope you like it. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to put all the links to Deb's shop in the description. Please do go and check her out. I'm also going to link her YouTube channel. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a nice little kit to work with, actually. Loads and loads of possibilities. So I will see you all again really soon. Take care. Bye.